The village of Ilaria stood on the edge of the wildlands, where the forest met the mountains. The sun had just begun to rise, casting long golden rays over the cobblestone streets and small stone cottages. Lena, the village healer, stood by the well, her hands resting on the edge as she looked out towards the vast wilderness beyond. Her heart was heavy with an unknown sense of dread. Something is not right, she thought, the usual quiet of the morning feeling too still. Her mother, Alina, appeared from the house behind her, a basket of herbs clutched in her arms. "What's troubling you, my daughter?" she asked, her voice warm yet knowing. Lena turned to her mother, her brow furrowed. "I can't shake this feeling," Lena said, her voice tinged with unease. "Something stirs in the forest, something ancient." Alina's face grew serious, and she placed a hand on Lena's shoulder. "The old legends speak of things that sleep beneath the earth, waiting for a time to awaken. We must be ready, Lena." The wind picked up, carrying a chill that sent a shiver down Lena's spine. The peace of the village felt fragile, like a curtain about to be torn away. As the morning wore on, Lena tried to shake the unease that had settled deep in her chest. She helped her mother prepare the herbs for the day's trade, but her thoughts kept drifting back to the forest. It felt as though the land itself was holding its breath. The villagers carried on with their daily routines, but there was a noticeable sense of caution in the air. A sudden commotion broke the silence as Doran, the village blacksmith, hurried into the square. His face was flushed, and his hands were shaking. "Lena," he called, his voice filled with urgency. "You need to see this." Lena exchanged a glance with her mother before following Doran toward the forest's edge. "What's happened?" she asked, her voice tight. Doran pointed to a clearing just beyond the tree line. Something has torn through the forest. I've never seen anything like it." Lena's heart skipped a beat as she followed Doran's gaze. The clearing in the forest was like nothing Lena had ever seen. The trees were twisted and broken, their trunks splintered as if some massive force had passed through. The ground was scarred, with deep gouges running through the earth. Doran stood at the edge, his eyes wide with disbelief. "It was like a storm, but no wind. Just destruction," he said, his voice trembling. Lena knelt beside the marks in the earth, her fingers brushing against the dark soil. A chill ran through her body as she realized this was no natural storm. "It's something else," she whispered. "Something darker." Marana, the village elder, appeared at the edge of the clearing. Her eyes narrowed as she took in the damage. "The forest has been disturbed," she said gravely. "This is a warning. The balance is shifting." Lena stood, her heart pounding. "What do we do?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "We prepare," Marana replied. "The darkness has begun to move." The village was on edge that evening. As the sun set behind the mountains, the villagers gathered in the square, whispering nervously amongst themselves. Lena and her mother stood in the center, surrounded by worried faces. "We must take action," Lena said, her voice steady but filled with urgency. "Whatever caused this destruction in the forest is coming for us next." Marana nodded, her expression grim. "The darkness stirs, but we cannot fight it blindly," she said. "We must gather those who can help and prepare ourselves for what's to come." A murmur of agreement swept through the crowd, but not all were convinced. "We've lived peacefully for generations," Doran said, his voice uncertain. "Why now? Why us?" Lena met his gaze, her eyes unwavering. "Because it's time. The balance has been disturbed, and it will not rest until it's restored." The crowd grew quiet, the weight of her words hanging in the air. The night was quiet, but it was a different kind of silence, one filled with tension. Lena sat by the fire, her thoughts racing. What had disturbed the forest? What force was waking from its long slumber? She didn't know, but she had a feeling that nothing would ever be the same again. The fire crackled in the hearth, casting flickering shadows across the room. Alina sat beside her, her hands still as she worked, but her eyes were distant. "Do you think we can stop it?" Lena asked, her voice soft. Alina looked up, her face filled with a wisdom that came from years of experience. We can't stop it, my dear, she said gently. But we can face it. Together. Lena nodded, though doubt still lingered in her heart. Whatever was coming, it would take everything they had to survive. The next morning, Lena woke to the sound of hurried footsteps and voices filled with concern. The villagers had gathered near the edge of the village, some talking in hushed tones, others looking nervously toward the forest. She could see her mother, Alina, speaking with Marana, the village elder. As Lena approached, she overheard Alina say, "The signs are unmistakable. We are not prepared for what lies ahead." Lena's stomach dropped. What had they seen? Marana turned, her stern face softening as she saw Lena approach. "The disturbance in the forest is not an isolated event," Marana explained quietly. "The darkness is spreading and it will soon reach us. We need to act fast." Lena felt her heart race. "What can we do?" she asked, the weight of fear pressing down on her chest. Marana's eyes were grave. "We must seek help from the ancient ones, those who still remember the old ways." The fear that had gripped the village was now in Lena's own heart. She knew their survival depended on how quickly they could prepare. Lena and her mother, Alina, set off with Marana toward the old ruins hidden deep within the forest. As they walked, the trees grew denser, the light dimmer, and the air cooler. Lena's heart beat faster with each step. She had heard the stories about the ruins, how they were once a place of great power, home to those who knew the ancient ways. But that had been centuries ago. What if we're too late? Lena asked, her voice trembling with fear. Marana turned to her, her face etched with determination. "We may be," she said. "But if we don't try, the darkness will surely come for us all." As they reached the edge of the clearing where the ruins stood, the air felt thick with an unnatural heaviness. The trees stood like silent sentinels, their branches twisted and darkened with age. The ruins themselves loomed ahead, broken stone structures rising from the earth. Lena couldn't help but shudder. They had to find something in this place, or they were doomed. The ruins were eerie in their silence. As Lena, Alina, and Marana walked deeper into the crumbling structures, Lena couldn't shake the feeling that they were being watched. The air grew colder as they passed through the archways, the stone beneath their feet slick with age. Marana stopped at the center of the clearing, raising her staff toward the sky. "This is where the old ones once stood," she said softly. "Their power was tied to the land. If we are to have any hope, we must awaken that power once more." Lena looked around, her fear rising. The ruins seemed to pulse with a strange energy, the stones vibrating under her feet. Suddenly a voice echoed through the clearing, soft, faint, but unmistakably present. "The land remembers," the voice whispered. Marana's eyes closed in concentration. "Yes," she said, "the power is still here, but it will not awaken willingly." Lena's heart pounded in her chest as she realized the true gravity of their task. The ground trembled as Marana's chant grew louder, and the air around them crackled with energy. Lena felt the earth beneath her feet shift, as if the land was responding to Marana's call. The stones of the ruins began to glow brighter, and a low hum echoed from deep within the earth. "It's working," Lena whispered. "But at what cost?" Alina's voice was steady. "This is the only way, Lena. We must summon the old ones, even if they don't wish to be found." Marana's chant reached a crescendo, and with a deafening roar, the earth split open. From the cracks, tendrils of dark energy rose, swirling like smoke. Lena stepped back, heart racing. The air was thick with the scent of earth and decay. "What is that?" she asked, her voice shaking. "The darkness," Marana replied grimly. "It's trying to stop us." The ground shook violently, and Lena felt a surge of power rip through the air. They had awakened something, but was it friend or foe? The dark energy rose higher, twisting and writhing as it coiled around the ruins. Lena could feel its pull, its cold tendrils reaching out for her. "We have to stop it," she cried, but Marana's voice stopped her. "No, we must hold on," she said, her voice unwavering despite the terror in the air. "This is the only way to bring the old ones back." As the tendrils reached their peak, A loud crack echoed through the clearing. The ground shook violently, and a massive figure appeared from the dark mist. It was an ancient being, its form shadowed and indistinct, but its presence was overwhelming. "You dare to awaken us," the voice boomed, deep and resonant. Lena stepped forward, her heart hammering in her chest. "We need your help," she said, her voice trembling but strong. The figure gazed down at her, its eyes glowing with an otherworldly light. "Your world is doomed," it said. "But I will grant you this one chance. Prove your worth." The darkness pulsed around them, and the air grew thick with anticipation. The ancient being loomed before them, its presence suffocating, like a storm cloud gathering on the horizon. The ground beneath their feet vibrated as it spoke. "Prove your worth," it said in a voice that echoed through the ruins. Lena's heart raced. "How do we prove ourselves?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. The being's glowing eyes narrowed. "You must face the trials," it declared. "The trials of courage, wisdom, and sacrifice. Fail, and your world will fall to the darkness." Lena stood frozen for a moment, the weight of the being's words sinking in. Marana stepped forward, her face resolute. "We are ready," she said, her voice steady. "We will face your trials, and we will succeed." The being's form flickered, as if considering her words, then it nodded. "Very well," it said, its voice heavy with the promise of what was to come. "Prepare yourselves, the trials begin now." The ancient being's form shifted, and a rift opened in the ground beneath them, swirling with dark energy. "The first trial is one of courage," it intoned, its voice reverberating through the ruins. Without warning, a series of figures materialized from the rift, shadowy, monstrous beings with glowing eyes. They moved toward Lena and the others, their steps silent but deadly. "You must face them," the being said. "Defeat them, or you will not survive." Lena's heart pounded as the creatures closed in. The air grew colder, and the ground beneath her feet seemed to crack with each step of the approaching monsters. "We have no choice," Lena whispered to Marana. Marana nodded, raising her staff. "Stand strong, and do not falter." The battle was about to begin, and Lena knew that the first test of courage would be the hardest yet. The creatures advanced swiftly, their movements predatory and unnatural. Lena's sword clashed against the first monster's clawed hand, sending sparks flying. The creature screeched and retaliated, but Lena dodged just in time. "Stay focused," Marana shouted from behind, her staff glowing brightly as she deflected another creature's strike. The battle was fierce, and Lena's strength was tested like never before. Each blow she landed seemed to do little against the creatures, their forms flickering like shadows. "We're not winning," Lena muttered to herself, panic creeping into her chest. But Marana's voice cut through the chaos. "Courage is not about defeating the monsters, Lena. It's about standing firm when the odds are against you." Lena's resolve hardened. She took a deep breath and struck again, her movements swift and precise. She couldn't afford to fail. Not now. The battle raged on, and Lena felt her strength beginning to wane. The creatures were relentless, and no matter how hard she fought, they seemed to multiply. Then, just as she was about to strike again, the ground beneath her feet cracked open, and a massive creature, larger and darker than the others, emerged. Its eyes burned with a fiery intensity, and its form was solid, not flickering like the others. Lena froze in shock as the creature loomed over her. "What is that?" she gasped, taking a step back. "The true test," Marana said, her voice filled with a mixture of awe and dread. The creature's roar shook the earth, and Lena knew this was no longer about courage. It was about survival. The creature lunged toward her, and Lena barely managed to roll out of the way. She had to defeat it, but how? The massive creature's roar echoed through the ruins, and Lena could feel the ground tremble beneath her feet. The air was thick with the creature's dark energy. She took a deep breath, her hands shaking as she gripped her sword tighter. "I can do this," she whispered to herself. The creature lunged again, but this time, Lena was ready. She ducked beneath its strike and leaped to the side, landing lightly on her feet. Mirana's voice rang out, calm and clear. The heart is the source of power, Lena. Aim for its core. Lena nodded, understanding. With newfound resolve she charged, dodging the creature's attacks, and finally drove her sword into its glowing heart. The creature let out a deafening screech before it collapsed into a heap of smoke and shadows. As the last of the darkness faded, the ruins fell silent. Lena stood, panting heavily, but she had won. The first trial was complete. The air was thick with anticipation as Lena, Mirana, and Alina stood at the edge of the ruins. The first trial was over, but the darkness that had once seemed distant was now far too close. Lena's chest still ached from the battle, but the victory had stirred something deeper within her. "We have passed the test of courage," Mirana said, her voice firm yet cautious. "But there is more to come." Lena turned to her, confusion clouding her face. "What do you mean?" she asked, her voice hoarse from the battle. "The second trial," Mirana explained, "is one of wisdom. We must seek answers from the land itself, and it will not be easy." Alina's eyes were grave as she added, "The land has been corrupted, Lena. The trial will test not only your mind but your spirit. You must understand the past to shape the future." Lena nodded, a sense of resolve filling her. The path was clear now, though the dangers ahead seemed greater than ever. "Let's begin," she said. The journey to the ancient grove was long and treacherous. The path through the forest seemed to shift with each step they took, the trees towering over them, their branches intertwined like fingers in a twisted embrace. Lena couldn't shake the feeling that the forest itself was alive, watching them. "The wisdom of the ancients lies in the grove," Mirana said, her voice low and reverent. "But it is guarded by the spirits of the land. To enter, you must prove yourself worthy." The wind howled through the trees as Lena looked ahead, her pulse quickening. "How do we prove ourselves?" she asked, her voice filled with both hope and uncertainty. "You will know when the time comes," Mirana replied. As they neared the grove, Lena felt a strange warmth spread through her chest, a signal that the trial was about to begin. The trees opened up before them, revealing the ancient grove at the heart of the forest, bathed in soft, ethereal light. As Lena stepped into the grove, the temperature dropped, and the air grew thick with an ancient presence. The trees around them seemed to bend inward, their branches forming a circle of protection. Suddenly, a figure materialized from the shadows. It was tall, clothed in robes made of leaves and vines, its face obscured by a hood. The figure raised a hand, and the air around them rippled with energy. "You seek wisdom," the figure said, its voice echoing like a whisper in the wind. "But wisdom comes at a price." Lena took a step forward, her heart racing. "We're ready," she said, her voice steady despite the fear tightening in her chest. The figure tilted its head, as if assessing her. "Very well," it said. "The first question is simple. What is the greatest strength of the heart?" Lena paused, thinking. "It's the ability to love and sacrifice," she said. The figure's eyes flickered, and it nodded. "You are wise, child, but the true test has only begun." The figure raised its hand again, and this time, a stone pedestal emerged from the ground, glowing with an otherworldly light. Upon the pedestal rested a small crystalline orb, radiating with intense power. "This orb holds the knowledge you seek," the figure intoned. "But to claim it, you must answer one final question. What will you sacrifice for the truth?" Lena's breath caught in her throat. The weight of the question was unbearable. She glanced at Mirana and Alina, but neither spoke, their expressions solemn. The forest around them seemed to hold its breath. After a long pause, Lena stepped forward, her voice quiet but unwavering. "I would sacrifice my fear," she said. "Only by letting go of fear can I truly understand what I must do." The figure nodded, and the orb on the pedestal glowed brighter. "You have answered with wisdom and courage," it said. "The knowledge you seek is now yours." As Lena reached out and touched the orb, a surge of energy coursed through her, filling her with visions of the past. She saw ancient warriors, their swords raised in battle, their faces filled with pride and courage. She saw the land before it was corrupted, a place of beauty and harmony. But then she saw the darkness, how it had seeped into the earth, corrupting everything it touched. The visions stopped abruptly, and Lena gasped, her body trembling with the weight of the knowledge. "What have I seen?" she whispered. "You have seen the truth," the figure said. "The darkness was once part of this land, but it was banished long ago. Now it has returned, stronger than ever." Lena stood, heart pounding. The knowledge was clear, but the weight of it was immense. "We must stop it," she said, her voice filled with conviction. The figure nodded, its eyes filled with an ancient sadness. "You must, but the price of victory will be steep." The grove fell silent as Lena slowly stepped away from the orb, her heart still racing from the visions she had witnessed. The weight of the ancient knowledge pressed down on her, and she could feel its implications settling deep in her bones. "What now?" Lena whispered, her voice shaky. Mirana stepped forward, her expression grave. "We know what we must do," she said. "We must gather the other clans. The darkness will spread, but together we stand a chance." Alina, who had been silent up to that point, nodded. "The land is fractured, Lena. The balance is fragile, but if we unite the tribes, we can fight back." Lena's gaze turned back to the ancient figure, who stood still and silent, watching them with an unreadable expression. "Are we ready?" Lena asked, though part of her feared the answer. "The path ahead is uncertain," the figure said, its voice low and haunting. "But you have learned the truth. You must now use it." The journey to the clan's territories was long and arduous. The landscape around them seemed to change with each passing day, from rolling hills to dense forests to treacherous mountain passes. Lena could feel the growing urgency as the darkness continued to spread. "We need to make haste," she said, glancing over at Mirana, who was studying the path ahead. Mirana's face was tense with worry. "The tribes must be convinced," she said, her voice serious. "Many have not seen the signs. They will not believe the darkness is real." Alina added, her voice low, "But they will. When they see the signs for themselves, they will have no choice." The day stretched long, and the sun set earlier than Lena remembered, casting the world in an unnatural shadow. The journey was dangerous, but Lena had no choice now but to continue. Time was running out. As they neared the first clan's village, the tension in the air grew palpable. The village was nestled between two great cliffs, and the path leading up to it was a steep climb. As they reached the top, a group of warriors appeared, their eyes wary but filled with curiosity. "What is it that brings you here?" one of the warriors asked, his hand resting on the hilt of his sword. Mirana stepped forward, her voice steady and commanding. "The darkness has returned," she said, "and it threatens to swallow the land whole. We need your help." The warriors exchanged uncertain glances. Lena could see the doubt in their eyes, but also something else, a glimmer of fear. "We've heard the stories," the warrior replied, "but we've never seen the proof. Show us that the darkness is real, and we will stand with you." Lena nodded, understanding the challenge before them. "We will show you," she said, her voice firm. The villagers led them to a small clearing at the base of the cliffs, where a large stone monument stood. Mirana and Lena stood in front of it, waiting for the moment to show the warriors the truth. Mirana stepped forward and placed her hand on the monument. "This is where the earth was split when the darkness first arrived," she said, her voice carrying through the still air. Lena watched closely, her heart pounding. A low rumble began to vibrate beneath their feet, and the air grew thick with energy. Suddenly the ground cracked open, and from the fissure dark tendrils of smoke rose into the sky. The villagers gasped, their eyes wide with fear. The tendrils reached for the monument, spiraling into the air like serpents. "This is just a small sign," Mirana said, her voice steady despite the chaos. "The darkness is returning, and it will not stop until it consumes everything." The warriors, now visibly shaken, knelt before the monument. "We believe you," one of them said, his voice trembling. "What must we do?" Mirana nodded, her expression resolute. "We must unite the clans. Only together can we stand a chance against the darkness." The warriors stood, their fear giving way to determination. "We will call the others," the warrior who had spoken earlier said. "But it will take time." Lena stepped forward, her voice steady. "We don't have time," she said. "The darkness is already spreading. We need to move fast." Marana placed a hand on Lena's shoulder. "Patience, Lena. We cannot rush the process, but we will gather the clans, and when they are united, we will strike." The group stood together, the warriors now in full agreement, ready to fight for the survival of their world. The journey to unite the clans took longer than Lena had hoped. The path was fraught with difficulties, and many of the tribes remained skeptical of the threat they faced. But as the signs became clearer, their resistance started to fade. Lena, Marana, and Alina stood before the largest of the clans, gathered around a great bonfire in the center of the camp. The leader of the clan, a tall man with a fierce gaze named Kalen, stood before them. His arms crossed over his broad chest, his expression unreadable. "You claim the darkness is returning," he said. "But we have lived for centuries without seeing it. What makes you so sure it is real?" Marana stepped forward, her voice steady. "Because we have seen it with our own eyes," she said. "And we have felt its power." Kalen studied her for a moment before nodding. "Then we shall see it for ourselves. But if it proves false, you will answer to me." The tension in the air was palpable, but Lena could see the first glimmer of trust forming. They had to convince Kalen, and soon. As the discussion continued, Lena felt the weight of responsibility settle heavily on her shoulders. She knew that the fate of their world depended on these conversations, on convincing each clan that the threat was real. "We've seen the signs," Lena said, her voice firm, "and we know the darkness is returning. It's not a matter of belief, it's a matter of survival." Kalen's eyes narrowed. "What exactly do you expect from us?" he asked, his voice skeptical. "We've lived well enough without getting involved in your troubles." Marana stepped in, her voice calm but commanding. "This is not a matter of choice. The darkness is not something you can ignore. It will consume everything, including your lands, if you do not act." Kalen was silent for a moment, staring into the fire. "Very well," he said at last. "We will stand with you. But know this, if you are wrong, we will hold you responsible." Lena nodded, a mixture of relief and fear filling her chest. They had one ally now, but the true battle was still ahead. The next day, the clans gathered in the central clearing, a place where their leaders met to discuss matters of importance. Lena and Marana stood at the front, facing the assembled leaders. Alina stood beside them, her expression serene but concerned. "This is the moment," Lena thought, her heart racing. "We must convince them all." One by one the leaders spoke, voicing their doubts and concerns. "What proof do you have that the darkness is even real?" one leader asked. "We've seen no signs in our lands." Another leader spoke up. "What if this is just a ruse to get us to fight each other?" Lena's heart pounded as the doubts grew louder. But Marana stepped forward, her voice firm. "The darkness has already shown itself," she said. "And if you do not believe us, you will soon see it for yourselves. We are not here to convince you. We are here to save your people." Lena could feel the tension shift, and slowly, one by one, the leaders began to nod in agreement. The battle was still ahead, but now they had the support of the clans. The gathering lasted for hours, but by the time the sun dipped below the horizon, the decision had been made. The clans would unite. "We will fight together," Kalen said, his voice steady. "And we will stand against the darkness, no matter what it takes." Lena felt a sense of relief wash over her, but it was fleeting. "We have won their trust," she thought. But the battle is still far from over. Marana turned to Lena, her eyes filled with quiet pride. "You have done well, Lena," she said. "You've brought them together." But Lena could not shake the feeling that they were only at the beginning of something much darker. "It's not enough yet," she said softly. "We need more time, more strength. The darkness is already moving." Marana's expression darkened. "Time is something we do not have. We must act swiftly." Lena nodded, her heart heavy with the knowledge that the hardest part was still ahead. The evening was filled with preparations for the coming war. Lena moved through the camp, her thoughts heavy as the clan members gathered weapons and supplies. The weight of the world seemed to settle on her shoulders with each passing hour. We have the clans united, Lena thought. But will it be enough? Alina appeared beside her, her eyes filled with concern. You've done more than anyone could ask of you, Lena, she said softly. But I know you're worried. Lena nodded, her gaze distant. The darkness has been awake for too long, she said. We can't afford to make mistakes. Marana joined them, her face grim. The first battle will be difficult, she said. But it will show us where we stand. We must be ready for whatever comes next. Lena looked at her, determination filling her chest. We will be ready, she said. We have no choice. As the night fell, the warriors of the clans prepared for the dawn of the first battle. The dawn of battle arrived, and the camp was alive with movement. The warriors gathered, their faces set with determination as they donned their armor and prepared their weapons. Lena stood at the edge of the camp, watching as the unified clans prepared to face the darkness that threatened to consume them all. The weight of the responsibility still lingered in her chest, but the unity of the clans gave her strength. This is it, she thought. The moment we've been waiting for. Marana approached, her eyes filled with quiet resolve. The first strike will be the hardest, she said, her voice calm. We must hold our ground, Lena. We cannot allow the darkness to take root. Lena nodded, her gaze firm. We'll hold the line, she said. Together, we will stand. Alina joined them, her eyes proud but heavy with the weight of what was to come. Be strong, both of you, she said softly. The world depends on it. The battle ahead would be their greatest challenge, but for the first time, Lena felt certain they could face it, if they stood united. The clans moved out in formation, the sound of their steps echoing in the cool morning air. Lena led the way, her heart pounding in her chest. The forest was eerily silent, as if holding its breath in anticipation of the coming clash. As they reached the edge of the forest, the landscape opened up to reveal the battlefield, a vast open plain with the dark silhouettes of the enemy's army rising in the distance. Lena's stomach tightened. They're here, she whispered. The darkness is already at our doorstep. Marana turned to her, her expression grim but determined. We must not let them cross this field. This is where we make our stand. Lena nodded, her grip tightening around her sword. We fight for our land, she said, her voice unwavering. And we will not let it fall. The two armies faced each other, the tension thick in the air, and the first wave of battle was about to begin. The battle erupted with a deafening roar. The clash of swords and shields rang through the air as the two armies collided. Lena fought with everything she had, her sword cutting through the enemy forces, but there were too many of them. The darkness seemed endless, and the air was thick with fear. Hold the line, Marana shouted as she struck down another enemy soldier. Lena's muscles burned with exhaustion, but she refused to stop. As she looked around, she saw her fellow warriors fighting with everything they had, their faces filled with fear, but also unwavering resolve. We can do this, she thought, we have to. But then from the enemy's ranks, a massive figure appeared, darker and more terrifying than any of the others. It towered over the battlefield, its glowing eyes fixed on Lena. What is that? Lena gasped, her voice barely a whisper. The final test, Marana said, her voice low. Defeat it, and we will win this battle. The massive figure from the enemy's ranks charged toward Lena, its form made of shadow and flame. Lena's heart raced as she stepped forward, her sword raised. The creature's massive claws swiped at her, but she dodged just in time, feeling the heat of its strike. We have to defeat it, Lena thought, her mind racing. She could feel the power of the darkness emanating from the creature. Marana's voice rang out, aim for its heart. Lena nodded, her grip tightening on her sword as she lunged forward. She dodged the creature's strike and with one powerful blow, drove her sword into its chest. The creature let out a deafening scream, and for a moment, everything fell silent. The creature's massive form began to flicker and dissolve, its dark energy dissipating into the air. Lena stood, panting, her sword still buried in the creature's heart. "It's over," she whispered, her heart still pounding in her chest. The creature's collapse signaled the turning point of the battle. The remaining enemy forces hesitated, and the clans pressed forward, their victory now within reach. Lena stood amidst the battlefield, exhausted but resolute. The darkness had been pushed back. For now. Mirana approached, her expression proud but weary. "You did it, Lena," she said, her voice filled with admiration. Lena shook her head, her thoughts still racing. "We did it," she corrected. "Together, we all did." As the last of the dark creatures fell, the warriors of the clans began to regroup, their faces filled with relief and victory. The battle had been won, but Lena knew this was only the beginning. The darkness will return, she thought, but we are ready. The sun began to break through the storm clouds, casting light over the battlefield. It was a new day, and for the first time, Lena felt a sense of hope. They had won, but the war was far from over.